Can you hear me? Great. So, let me start at first saying a big thank you to all of you that came here today to join this beautiful experience. At least it's a beautiful experience for me, so I hope it is the same for you. And a big thank you to the organizers, because they did a great job here today. And we came here yesterday in the evening just to say hello, and saw how them were preparing everything with passion, and it's that passion that is beautiful, because you see the passion that the people working in and for the open source movements should always have when doing something, doing anything in their lives, especially in the open source field. So let me start introducing myself. My name is Stefano Marinelli. I solve problems, which actually is a slogan, a quote from a movie, but it's a slogan I used in the last presentation in Dublin at FreeBSD conference. And small spoiler, it will be the same slogan I will use in Canada in June, presenting another talk about the BSDs, of course. So I am founder and barista of the BSD Cafe, which is you know, an open and welcoming community about people passionate about the BSD systems, or just passionate about open source systems, so BSDs, Linux, or any other kind of operating system, especially if it's in the open source field. Devs, we have all kinds of users coming from all around the world, and it's a place that I like to, you know, to be the barista of, because the people at BSD Cafe are positive and have a positive attitude towards all the open source solutions. So something to grow up, not to fight or just have a bad exchange of ideas. I work in my company. My company is called Prodotto in Rete. It's a container of ideas and solutions. Why ideas and solutions? It reminds the part of the I solve problems. I don't sell boxes. I don't sell specific tools or specific software pieces. I don't like being tied to any kind of solution, so I'm always trying to use the best tool, the best technology to solve a specific problem. That could be my problem or our clients' problems. And that's, I think, the best way to embrace open source, because open source is about open mind at first. So we should have an open mind, open ideas about what the world is presenting and the communities are creating and giving us the opportunity to work with. Of course, I'm passionate about technology and computing, and so it was quite straightforward to make my passion my profession. So I'm one of the lucky persons that every morning I wake up and say, oh, great, today I'm going to do great things. And after so many years, it's a privilege for me. So I'm quite happy to be here and tell you about this. Let me start from the early days. I had the first meeting with Linux in 1996 with this CD box. I wasn't still 17 years old. And it was love at first shell. I mean, I felt I had the power to do anything I wanted with that shell. And I was right, as the bash is Turing complete. But at that time, I had to rely on those cranky modems, slow modems. So I could only use the CD-ROMs to download, install, and use the Linux systems. Despite all of this, in 1997, Linux became my everyday system. So I started using only Linux, except a small Windows partition for some gaming, as Linux wasn't great at those times. Fast forward to 2002, I had my first encounter with the BSD systems, FreeBSD, to be more precise. And I understood that the open source wasn't only providing Linux or other similar solutions, but there was an entire world I could experiment with, and I could contribute to, and a lot of great people I could interact with. Same mind, same mindset. So I wasn't the strange one advocating for something different compared to the typical solutions you could find at those times. But there were lots of people that love to do what I love to do. So that was absolutely great. So let's get back to those years. What was open source 20 or 30 years ago, so somewhat 30 years ago, I'm getting old, was all about thinking differently. I mean, it wasn't something like, okay, it's open source, it's free, I do not have to pay anything, great, let's embrace it. No, it was just a different mindset, a different way of thinking. It was mainly about being free. And free is something we're losing today, and that's why I'm here to tell you about the BSDs. At those times, people I was talking to were just saying that open source tools, operating systems, programs, were just toys for universities. The real world is powered by other systems, you know, commercial system, Unixes, Windows, and so on. I'm proud to say that we won the war. We won this war, because if we are here today, look around you, all these people passionate about open source, working with open source daily, on a day-to-day basis, it means we have won. But the problem is that today, the open source is becoming, you know, mainstream. I mean, it's creating monocultures. Even today, I heard beautiful presentations, but there have been words that have been hammering my head. Kubernetes, Linux, Kubernetes, GitHub. Yeah, of course, great solutions, great websites, great services. But open source is not just Linux. It's not just about Kubernetes, Docker containers, Docker files. So that's the point. We have focused our attention from technologies, from the underlying technologies. I want to embrace this technology to solve this specific problem, to the specific tools. And this could bring some problems in time, because innovation should be something that will preserve our freedom to choose, not just something we have to rush behind to reach the brand new shiny technology that has been presented, maybe even unstable. So we're not focused anymore on solving problems, but just in presenting, selling the latest technology, the latest buzzword. And so 20 years ago, 15 years ago, open source meant creative alternatives. Oh, we have Windows. We want different operating systems. We have the commercial Unixes. We want different Unix-like operating systems. And this is why we have today Linux or other systems like those. And we weren't doing it because it was simple. It wasn't simple at all. Today it's much simpler to deploy an open source technology than 20 years ago. And not because it was free, as a free beer, because clients were complaining if things weren't working, and the fault was always, you didn't use Windows, that's your fault. But we wanted to be free from impositions and technological and ideological constraints. So what we have today is that we have a world dominated by cyber threats. And this is a big problem today, and everything is connected. We are totally dependent on technology. We can do anything with it. We have to do anything with the technology. But we have lost the value of the stability. We just rush to create something new. Anything must be changed for the sake of changing, not because it will solve an old problem. Sometimes newer solutions create more problems than the ones they are supposed to solve. This is not always true, of course, but this happens. And we lost a bit the concept of continuity, upgradability, and complete system visibility. DevOps, I'm talking at you. You just fire up Docker containers in the cloud, you lost completely, sometimes, of course, not always, the idea of what you have there. Then maybe a wrong line will produce a terabyte of log in 2 hours, and the company will have to pay for all those useless logs just because just putting up all those workloads in the cloud created a complete blind point about that problem. So, just to go on, the hype cycle problem we have today. The important is that something is new. Not better, not more secure, not more stable, but new. There's a new kid in town, let's all become friends with him. Another typical sentence I hear from devs is, it will be fixed in the next version, but the next version will never be released. Probably will be another software with in another new language, in another stack, and so on. Another thing that I see from time to time, we need automatic restarts when the software crashes. My reply is, we don't want software that crashes, because a crash actually is a problem. And restarting a crashed software doesn't mean we have solved the problem. It means we have a serious problem, because a crashing software is a software that could spit out any kind of output. It could even, segfaulting for example, it could even spit out a specific area of memory which could contain data that should not be printed at all. So we don't need to have systemd or Kubernetes that are fast in restarting. We need stable software. We need software that won't crash. And the typical sentence I hear, and I always joke in my presentations about it, oh, your software is slow. Then you see there's recursion over recursion, recursion. The typical response is, we need more power. Maybe you're just presenting a static website using 128 gigabytes of RAM because you created tons of stacks just to do that. So, this could be a bit. Rust. Personally, I like Rust. And I'm absolutely positive towards writing things in Rust. We should use modern and more secure and efficient languages to implement new stuff. I'm totally positive. But when I see a software which is maybe 20 years old but still maintained in C, and then I see rewrite in Rust, and that becomes stable, and then you see that software in Rust segfaulting, the question I ask myself is, it shouldn't segfault. It's not supposed to segfault. You contact the devs, and they say, oh, well, yeah, we had to take some shortcuts, so we bypassed all the protections because we had to go on with the release. So what's the advantage of using this, consider that the older release, the previous implementation was safer? Let's just finish with the implementation and then replace it. So I think that stability matters more than implementation language. As I said, I'm totally positive in using those modern languages, but let's not rush to put them everywhere just for the sake of being modern or trendy. Another reply I usually get is, okay, let's add some pieces to make it more secure. And that's totally opposite to my point of view. We're not putting pieces to make things more secure. We're not putting weight on a car to make it faster or consume less. So it's almost the same situation. So the question is, where did that freedom go? That freedom that we were advocating about, that we have pushed for so many years. I mean, Linux, Docker, Kubernetes are great tools. I'm totally positive towards them. Don't get me wrong, many of my servers are still powered by Linux and will surely be, because Linux, for those specific problems, is the best solution. But that's not the only solution we can use to solve those problems. And using those open solutions, okay, but always the same set of solutions, will make all our freedom die. Because freedom dies when we all decide to use the same tools. At BSD Cafe, all the services for the users are on open and, when possible, federated protocols. Because open and federated protocols and solutions will mean the data will always be available, even when the software won't be available at all. I'm not sure about the Discord, Slack, and so on data. Because I've seen so many things that were supposed to stay forever close from one day to another. So we should stop using solutions just because everybody's doing that. The only supported way of installing this program is by Docker. Then you open the Docker file and see from Debian 9. As a system administrator, I'm shocked by that. So one of the reasons why I'm here to tell you about the BSDs is be free and evaluate alternatives. Because the cost of monoculture is existential for open source. Remember, embrace and extinguish is something that we were saying 20 years ago, but it's still relevant today. So if 20 years ago we were using what everyone else was using, we would have no Linux, no BSDs, no LibreOffice, no Nextcloud, no Kubernetes, nothing, no Docker, nothing that you're using today. Just Windows variations in different prices and expensive Unix systems. We would all be bound to licenses and vendors and totally stuck with closed solutions. So, the BSDs. How many of you have always used one of the BSDs? Okay, okay, great, more than expected. The BSDs are a family of operating systems, and please do not mix them with the Linux distributions. Those are totally different things. The BSDs are different operating systems that are all coming from an original operating system called BSD that was created at Berkeley University in the 70s, so many years ago. A long time before Linux was even conceived. And it was a mature operating system, so mature and professional that when Minix was created by Professor Tannenbaum, he created Minix as an educational tool because he was sure that the BSD would be the operating system, what Linux is today, for example. But there was, as often happens when an open source product becomes popular, there was a legal case that stalled for some years the advantages of the BSDs because people were scared and stopped adopting the BSDs. Despite of that, in 1993, from the original BSD, NetBSD and then FreeBSD were created. OpenBSD forked from NetBSD later, then DragonFly BSD from NetBSD, and so on. And the point is, sorry? Linus Torvalds himself said that he could have never written Linux if, at that time, the BSDs could be used without any specific problem. So, consider that they have an important ancestor. And they all have, so the different BSDs, despite being different operating systems, they have some things in common. And the things they have in common is that the kernel and userland are made and maintained by the same team. So they completely glued together and released together. So it won't be like Linux where you have a new release of the kernel, but the distribution will support only previous releases of the kernel itself and so. And this means that the userland tools are totally taking advantage of any advancement in the kernel. So when, for example, there is a new feature that has been added in the kernel, the userland will, of course, present it immediately in the next release, of course, and try to make it usable and effective for users. Another thing that is common to all the BSDs is the consistency in tools and updates. All the BSDs have a good way to update the operating system, and they will give you a working and reliable operating system after the update. You won't find yourself in a boot loop or something like that. Another thing that people usually do not consider, but it's important, is the documentation. All the BSDs have excellent documentation. They have full and complete man pages, and this is especially true for OpenBSD, where the problem in documentation, a lack in documentation or something wrong, is a serious bug that could even block a release cycle. So the documentation is especially important for the BSD systems. So you can use the main pages and you find examples any kind of explanation, anything in the man pages. Because the idea behind the BSDs is that we have to continue with an evolution, not a revolution, at every release. It's quite likely that if you have a FreeBSD server, for example, that has been there for 10 years and you upgrade it to the current release, it will keep working without specific. You won't notice any difference, because if it was working 10 years ago, it will be working today. You won't find IF config that disappears, then you have to restore. You know what I mean. So, just for a short idea of the BSDs, I'm not coming here to tell you technical stuff about the BSDs. You're all tech people. If you're interested, you'll be absolutely able to search for information and find them. But the point is that FreeBSD is a generalist system. It's focused on stability and performance. And for example, performance means that Netflix is pushing their contents using FreeBSD servers, and they're going to conferences to explain how and why they're doing that, because they found it to be more suitable and better than Linux for this. There's also a fork called Hardened BSD, which is also focusing on hardening the base operating system of FreeBSD. FreeBSD has ZFS as a native file system, and this means that FreeBSD will also have boot environments. You upgrade, the system automatically creates a snapshot, the boot environment is created, you reboot, anything will be fine, but in case that anything should go wrong, you can just say, okay, let's boot with the previous boot environment, and you'll be back to the previous system before upgrading. And also because there is a complete separation between the OS and packages. All the FreeBSD packages will be installed in use local, while the base system will use the typical path that you can also find on Linux. And this is great because you can remove the use local and you'll find an clean but working FreeBSD installation as if you had immediately just installed it. FreeBSD has containerization since the year 2000. It's called jails. They're mature, they're secure, they're stable, and the entire operating system is jail aware. So it's not something that has been put over the operating system like C groups to implement it. The base operating system is already a jail, so this is positive. We have Beehive. Beehive is the virtualization platform which, according to my tests, and not only mine, of course, outperforms KVM on Linux, and for some workloads even by a big factor. OpenSense and pfSense are based on FreeBSD, because PF is a great firewall, so those products are based on the steady foundations of the FreeBSD. It's the operating system of the PlayStation consoles. So every time you play with your PlayStation, you're using FreeBSD. So the question I asked, how many of you? I'd expect now to see more residents after this information. And macOS, iOS, Apple operating system contain some of the FreeBSD code, actually some of the generic BSD code. OpenBSD, I'm getting short of time, so is more focused on security and code correctness. The code is constantly audited and simplified. The idea of the OpenBSD devs is, let's clean up what we can clean up, and let's try to understand what could happen if, and put all the bad things that could happen to your system. So they also implemented security mechanisms like pledge and unveil. Yeah, we have similar things in Linux nowadays, but this is strictly and deeply integrated in the system. And many things that you daily use, like OpenSSH, are created and maintained by the OpenBSD team. So, you know, the security standards. Another funny thing about, but interesting, the OpenBSD team will never care about the market, the users. They just implement the way and what they think is worthy. So don't just go there and ask, I need this. They will probably not listen to you. They will just go on, and if it's okay for you, great. But otherwise, they don't care. And it's ideal for routers, firewalls, security-critical systems. It's fine when I call clients and say, yeah, have you seen that vulnerability? Yeah. Well, the OpenBSD team has solved it 20 years ago. So, NetBSD, it's the most portable of those operating systems, of those BSDs. There was a slogan that was, of course, it runs NetBSD. it supports over 50 architectures. Its development cycles is slower, just to be conservative, and the code quality is a necessity because to support a 20 years old, 30 years old architecture mean you have to be careful of the modifications you're going to perform. And I'm using that, not only me, of course, for embedded systems or in general systems that will need to be supported for a long time, or just that it's better not to stay there and upgrade continuously just because a new dot release with new features. So, I'll be short. Real-world benefits I've experienced. I've migrated many of my workloads and my clients' workloads from Proxmox, Linux, you know what, from Linux to the BSDs. And what I've been experiencing, and this is the talk I presented in Dublin, is general better stability and security, less problems, less security problems, less stability problems. Upgrading is a joy, so I would never say something like, I can't upgrade that server because everything will be broken as the PHP version, this, that, etc. Consistency, less vulnerable to common attacks, as I told you before. Consistency, IX0 will remain IX0, won't be renamed from that to that just after a reboot. I don't know why this happens in Proxmox, for example. And I found that FreeBSD has a great, handles better I/O when under pressure. When you see a Linux system with high I/O weight, it becomes extremely sluggish and unpredictable. Virtual machines start to hang, and this doesn't happen with FreeBSD. So users are happy because the system is more responsive, so they don't notice if there are problems like performance problems. And NetBSD, why? Because I could say your platform will be supported for many, many years. So don't worry, you won't have to change your hardware just because of this. So why choose the BSDs in 2025? Many reasons. By security in an increasingly hostile environment. I have documented it in a blog post, a situation where one of those crypto miners had been injected in a WordPress plugin and was continuously firing up, auto-scaling was continuously firing up cloud instances, containers, and it wasn't working on FreeBSD, so problem solved, before upgrading, of course. Stability. Performance, not creating new pieces to put inside the operating system, but removing the unnecessary complexity. Freedom. Please don't be fooled by monoculture. This will mean we will lose everything in not a long time. Just following one single path will mean the destruction of the open source world. And it's too important for all of us. Systems are designed with coherent philosophy. Once you understand their frame of mind, you will be able to understand everything about that operating system. So don't be afraid to try the BSD systems. Despite Beastie, which is the mascot of the BSDs, they don't hurt. They can serve you well, and more than untamable beasts, just consider them like nice pets, that will serve you well and will be nice for you. So, thank you for your attention. I'm happy to be here. And I'd be glad to see you at BSD Cafe.
Thank you, Stefano. Really a philosophical lesson, like what is open source, how to maintain it using BSD. It's I really like this philosophical lesson.
Thank you. I have experienced so many phases of the open source world, starting from the early days where we looked like just a bunch of nerds. Saying strange things, up to today, where I'm assisting to the big companies, big tech, embracing open source, but just leading it where they want to, not where you want to. And that's the reason why I decided to give this kind of direction.
Your passion is contagious, I can say.
I hope so. That's my idea.
Just time for one question. Okay. so I can give you the trophy and thank you for everything you do in the OS world.
Thank you.